Caitlyn Jenner, the woman formerly known as Bruce Jenner, made her debut in a big way.
We're achieving greater and greater visibility in society.
Transgender visibility might be moving from the margins into the mainstream. But what does it mean?
As long as trans women of color are suffering and dying in the streets, I'm going to hold off a little bit on the celebrations.
The 8th trans woman murdered in the U.S. this year.
Every breath a trans person takes is an act of revolution.
And while transgender people helped kick off the fight for gay equality, progress in their fight for civil rights has been decades in the making.
What's shocking is not Bruce Jenner coming out. What's shocking is the way people treat us.
That female side is part of me.
When Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, told a story about being born with a body that didn't match her internal sense of who she is, many people gained a better understanding of what it means to be a transgender person.
Finally, people have woken up and realized that they know someone who's transgender.
With an award-winning TV show about a family patriarch changing gender,
This is me.
and transgender actress Laverne Cox gracing the cover of Time magazine, you might think society has reached a new level of understanding. Activist Lords Ashley Hunter says you would be mistaken.
The community that I work for is wondering how they're going to eat tonight, wondering if they're going to have health coverage, wondering if they're even going to make it back to the shelter where they're staying. I don't want people to watch Transparent and say this is the lives of trans people, because it is not.
In 2002, Hunter came to New York City at age 26 on a one-way bus ticket from Detroit with $20 in her pocket. She planned on doing community service work in exchange for a place to stay, but when she went to a women's shelter, she was turned away for being transgender. Then, she says, things only got worse.
So I found myself homeless and ended up having to be assigned to a men's shelter called Ward's Island. Ward's Island housed about 1,000 men. And every night, there was a fear for me. I couldn't sleep. I can remember a time where I went to take a shower, and a man came into a shower and raped me. And he had a razor blade. And there was nothing that I can do. When I went to the shelter staff to tell them what had happened to me, they blamed me. They told me that I didn't have to be there, that it was my choice to live this lifestyle that I was living. And so, for me, having to have those experiences, it's just a snapshot of what we have to go through just to live. Most trans people would rather sleep under an overpass or in the park than have to deal with that type of violence.
Hunter runs the Trans Women of Color Collective to provide leadership and raise awareness, not only about current events, but historical ones as well.
We come from a rich legacy of revolutionary freedom fighters. Historically, those stories have been erased from the history books.
What history remembers is the 1969 Stonewall Inn uprising, the birthplace of today's gay rights movement.
A routine police raid on an unlicensed bar, the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in Greenwich Village.
But what's been largely forgotten is the role transgender women played in kicking off that movement. Activist Randy Wicker describes how there were restrictions against serving alcohol to homosexuals in the 1960s, and
being in drag was illegal in those days. Dancing was permitted, although, of course, a white light would come on if a policeman came in and you had to stop dancing or find a member of the opposite sex to dance with. They really reached a point where they said, we're tired of this.
And so the next time the police raided, things took a different turn.
Suddenly, the customers were giving the police a hard time.
For the first time, the clientele sort of fought back.
The protests lasted for days, and transgender people were among the hundreds who took part.
Transgender people were the most motivated to fight back because they had been abused the worst by the system. But also the second thing is they had nothing to lose. For them, it was a great opportunity to get up on a soapbox and really give it to society. What have you been doing to us? You know, you're so wrong.
One of the early icons in the fight for transgender rights was the late Sylvia Rivera.
Sylvia always thought of Stonewall as the beginning of her activism to make changes in the world.
I was grateful to be there to see the revolution being born.
She really was the mother of the transgender movement.
Sylvia was a Puerto Rican street drag queen who, along with her friend Marsha P. Johnson, created Star House, a refuge for transgender runaways.
These kids, you know, they were going to end up being just ground up by the system, you know, not being able to find jobs, being forced into prostitution. Sylvia and Marsha hadn't lived it, so they knew what they were doing.
The survival instincts that made Rivera a fierce advocate were at odds, she said, with a gay rights movement that was trying to establish a more conventional identity.
We do not fit into their role of Main Street gay men and women.
Rivera stormed the stage after being excluded from a 1973 gay rights rally in New York City's Washington Square Park. She demanded that transgender people be recognized as part of the burgeoning lesbian and gay rights movement.
You all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I will not put up with this shit.
She was considered kind of disruptive and a loudmouth.
I believe in us getting our rights, or else I would not be out there fighting for our rights.
Sylvia Rivera died in 2002. That same year, New York State passed a gay rights bill that, despite Sylvia's dying wishes, did not include protections for trans people.
Even on her deathbed, she fought for the rights of her people.
Across the country, in California, 3 years before Stonewall, a similar uprising had taken place. It had mostly been forgotten until historian Susan Stryker stumbled on an obscure San Francisco gay magazine.
I found this beautiful document, and I open it up, and the centerfold is this thing that says, "On a hot August night in 1966, gays rose up."
At Gene Compton's Cafeteria, a 24-hour diner popular with transgender women, another routine police sweep erupted in spontaneous violence. Stryker made a film about the uprising.
A police car was destroyed, the corner newsstand was set on fire, and years of pent-up resentment boiled out into the night.
It was the first collective militant action against police harassment that we know of in U.S. history by trans and queer people. The cops thought they were dealing with people who were like the lowest rung of society.
Decades of those kinds of attitudes have taken their toll on the estimated 700,000 transgender people in the U.S. About half are believed to be trans men, says Nick Adams, who works for GLAAD, an LGBT advocacy organization. There isn't a lot of statistical information about the community, but it's a diverse group. Adams says the focus now should be on those most in need.
Visibility really needs to translate into legislative changes that make the world a safer place for those transgender people who are really struggling.
When you don't have resources, it makes you more susceptible to physical violence because now you're disposable. No one cares about you.
Whatever people think is shocking about transgender people's lives is nothing compared to the injustice that we have to face every freaking day.
Professor Jennifer Finney Boylan teaches in the English department at Barnard College and has written a best-selling memoir.
To be trans means to be visible. If you walk out your door, it can mean you are at risk for violence.
Many transgender people have been the targets of violent hate crimes. They're also at greater risk for suicide, as was the case of an Ohio transgender teen.
Alcorn's suicide note ended with a plea. "My death needs to mean something. Fix society, please."
What's shocking is that young people like Leila Alcorn have to throw themselves in front of a truck rather than live their lives.
Transgender teens and adults say they routinely endure discrimination in employment, housing, access to public bathrooms, and government willingness to acknowledge their gender status in official documents.
People fire us for being who we are.
The trans community has been left out of legislative advances by the gay community. Our gay and lesbian counterparts moved on and are celebrating life in ways that we have yet to experience. The priority is not marriage, not for Black trans women.
And while momentum now may be on the upswing, the movement that began nearly half a century ago still has a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Sylvia will be pissed the hell off that we're still fighting and struggling and we're still dying.
We'll know that our work is done when everyone can live the life that they love with honor and dignity.